Live from Washington, D.C., Jay Sekulow Live. Phone lines are open for your questions right now. And now, Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow.
We've got a special episode that we put together on the broadcast this week dealing with the issue of Planned Parenthood. I want you to understand exactly who they are, what the origins of Planned Parenthood are, especially as it's in the news right now as the health care bill goes through the United States Senate. Take a look at our trailer for the movie Abortion, Inc.
In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions.
I'm proud to be here today speaking on behalf of Planned Parenthood.
I think what we need to look at is the business of abortion.
It's around $500 million that we're giving Planned Parenthood.
An organization that's chopping up children and selling the body parts.
They've been caught red-handed.
I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want anyone to know.
We really did treat women like second-class citizens.
Planned Parenthood really is Abortion, Inc.
They believe that they're doing a service. Well, that child is in a surgical tray.
I would tell you that child has value.
We've got a lot more from our movie, Abortion, Inc., when we come back from the break. But let me encourage you to do something right now, and that is sign our petition to defund Planned Parenthood, as this issue is now at the United States Senate. We won in the House. Now the fight is in the United States Senate. You could call us at 1-877-989-2255 to sign that petition. That's 877-989-2255. Or simply go online to aclj.org. That's aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255.
The fight to protect life is intensifying. Now, with the Trump administration at the helm, efforts are ramping up to defend life and defund Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion provider.
In reality, what abortion is the taking of an unborn child's life.
Planned Parenthood receives hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars each year. And at the ACLJ, we're working with the Trump administration and members of Congress to stop the flow of taxpayer dollars to Planned Parenthood.
America will look back on this season in history and will be mortified about what happened in the abortion industry.
I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want anyone to know.
We're aggressively fighting on Capitol Hill to stop funding big abortion. The time to do that is right now. Add your name to our petition to defend life and defund Planned Parenthood. Call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or you can add your name online, aclj.org.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to go back to our movie, Abortion, Inc., and the history of Planned Parenthood.
In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions. The majority in cases from Texas and Georgia said that the decision to end a pregnancy during the first 3 months belongs to the woman and her doctor, not the government.
One of the things that most Americans think, and think wrongly, is that abortion began with Roe v. Wade. The truth is that every single civilization throughout all of antiquity and all the way up to the present time has had as a major component part of the culture abortion.
I think from the very beginning, I came with a large family. My mother died young, 11 children. That made an impression on me as a child. I was a trained nurse, went among the people. I saw women who were asked to have some means whereby they wouldn't have to have another pregnancy too early after the last child, the last abortion, which many of them had. So there's a number of things that are one after the other that really made you feel that you had to do something.
According to New York Health Department statistics, we now know that there are more African-American babies that are aborted in New York than actually born alive.
Of course, the lack of access for African-American women, in particular, to basic preventive health care, including family planning, is a huge problem in this country.
It is,
well.
And I don't want to spend, and I agree with you, that's is a aforementioned time of places that we've served and worked in, but it does concern me that 3 times the African-American population is 13%, yet they're being aborted 3 times percent of the population at 35%.
At the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, there were a number of revolutionary figures who wanted to remake the world as a kind of revolutionary challenge, to remake it in a kind of pseudo-scientific fashion. They wanted to usher in Tomorrowland.
Planned Parenthood and Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of that organization, were eugenicists. And eugenicists are not killing babies because of some political issue. They are on a mission to purify.
Planned Parenthood began as a eugenics movement. This was to create the superior race. And the target of Planned Parenthood were those that they deemed to be less desirable. And they viewed the minorities in our communities as the least desirable.
She believed that, that sexuality is a powerful engine to drive social change. And so she sought to usher in this revolutionary new age, starting with human sexuality, and do it by scientific means, by eliminating unwanted people groups, what she called human weeds. And the human weeds were specifically identified as blacks, Hispanics, Eastern Europeans, Slavs. She believed that these were sort of lower on the evolutionary chain. And so to bring about this new age of a race of thoroughbreds, as she called them, you had to eliminate the bad gene stocks out of the human gene pool. Well, abortion, birth control, those kinds of things really emerged out of that ideology. It wasn't medicine. It wasn't to help women. It wasn't to give freedom of choice. It was really, how do we reshape society?
Planned Parenthood had a history, according to its foundress, Margaret Sanger, of targeting Negro leaders. And she said, Negroes are like weeds who need to be exterminated. We don't want that word to get out. So what we need to do is to cultivate some of their leaders, get them on our side, have them think that we want to help them. This is how Planned Parenthood went after African-American leaders. They still do it today.
The eugenics movement is dead. They don't call it eugenics anymore. Planned Parenthood doesn't use the word eugenics. But the fact of the matter is, the result that they're getting is exactly the same. It's the elimination of a race. Where are these abortions taking place? Minority communities.
I went to Texas A&M University and met a woman there who was with Planned Parenthood. She was trying to recruit volunteers, student volunteers, but also certainly trying to talk about services to recruit patients as well. I immediately was sort of drawn to her booth because it was saturated in hot pink, and that's my favorite color. And so I went over to her. She asked me what I knew about Planned Parenthood and told her I knew nothing. And I think for her, that's probably like jackpot. She doesn't know anything about our organization, so I can sort of sell her all of our talking points. And she started telling me about all the wonderful work that Planned Parenthood does and how, low-income women would have nowhere else to go for health care if it wasn't for Planned Parenthood. And she did tell me that they did abortions, but she said it was just sort of this necessary evil, and it was just a very small percentage, just not very many abortions every year. And so I just sort of bought it and started volunteering with the organization as a student, and really believed that I was doing the right thing. I really believed that I was helping women.
We've got a lot more ahead as we continue the fight on the issue of Planned Parenthood. Again, join us in our petition. You could sign it at aclj.org. That's aclj.org, or 1-877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255 or aclj.org. Back with more.
The fight to protect life is intensifying. Now, with the Trump administration at the helm, efforts are ramping up to defend life and defund Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion provider.
In reality, what abortion is the taking of an unborn child's life.
Planned Parenthood receives hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars each year. And at the ACLJ, we're working with the Trump administration and members of Congress to stop the flow of taxpayer dollars to Planned Parenthood.
America will look back on this season in history and will be mortified about what happened in the abortion industry.
I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want anyone to know.
We're aggressively fighting on Capitol Hill to stop funding big abortion. The time to do that is right now. Add your name to our petition to defend life and defund Planned Parenthood. Call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or you can add your name online, aclj.org.
Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. Back to our movie, Abortion, Inc.
Planned Parenthood, for the most part, for most women, is synonymous with abortion. So when women came in, even if they said they were there for options counseling, they generally were there just to get information about abortion.
They call it reproductive care. They'll call it health care. These are words that are utilized to give it a more palatable sound, so that in the body politic, when the negotiations go on, they're talking about reproductive rights or women's health issues, when in reality, what we're talking about, and look at the procedure itself, we're talking about the destruction of an unborn child.
I said to Planned Parenthood, I'm having problems. And they says, well, you are pregnant. Let's do a pregnancy test. And then they says, you are pregnant, but you don't need a baby with everything that's going on in your life. We'll do something called a safe abortion.
I went into Planned Parenthood and they told me at that time, it's just tissue, it's like having your tonsils removed. And they actually paid for me. I was living in Colorado at the time, and that was before abortion was legal there. And they flew me, bought a plane ticket, flew me to California to have an abortion.
We had a script designed to overcome every objection, for that's what sales is. If you overcome the objection, you get the order. And in this case, this is the abortion. And we led her through this script. And she was scared, so she was easily led.
It's really a business built on a model of drawing women in for abortions.
I didn't know. I wasn't given any type of information as far as what it was. I was told that it was just a blob of tissue. I wasn't given any choices as far as ultrasounds, or told me to, why don't you go home, think about it, and then come back. Nothing like that. There was nothing positive.
She would confess, I think I may be pregnant. We can take care of this. No one needs to know. And then the first question is, what's the first day of your last normal period? And she figures that date and gives it to the so-called counselor, who's really just kind of a telemarketer over the telephone, because that's what they were trained to telemarket. And so she gives her the date and she says, you're 8 weeks pregnant. Now, what did she do? She confirmed her pregnancy over the telephone. Now, you'd think she'd say, stop, how can you tell me that I'm pregnant? I mean, you don't even know me, you've not done a pregnancy test. But no, this is the pregnancy expert. The seed is planted, the fear confirmed. And then the next question is this good news or bad news? And she says it's bad news. Of course it's bad news. She wouldn't be calling an abortion clinic if it were good news.
We would talk to them about gestational dates and what sort of abortion they could do, whether it was the medication abortion or the surgical abortion, depending on how far along they were. We would talk briefly about what the procedure would actually be like. I remember getting a directive from my supervisor, you know, that we didn't want to give them too much information about the abortion procedure. We didn't want to talk to them about risks associated with the procedure because we didn't want to scare them out of having an abortion.
I was in a back room. It was pretty much bench seating around 3 walls. There were about 8, 9 other girls in there, and there was a little draw curtain changing room with gowns and a big silver safety pin with a number on it. And so I was a number. And I think I was 514 or something like that. Those numbers stand out. And while you're waiting for your number to be called, you kind of make your way down the bench line and your vitals are taken. And the nurse or whoever she is, you know, tells you this is what you can expect. This is the kind of procedure you're going to have. I had the vacuum procedure and that's it. And it's just kind of real, very clinical, you know, just very matter of fact. Like, this is what you're doing. This is what's going to happen. Wait for your number to be called. And so some of the girls around me were really quiet. I was very, very quiet. Some were crying. Some were just gabbing with each other like it was, you know, no big deal.
I still remember lying on the steel cold table and staring up at that bright light and counting backwards from 10.
The anesthesiologist came in and explained what he'd be doing. And right as he was putting my IV in, the doctor comes in and he just sat at the end of the table and he never said a word to me. He just sat and he looked at me. And he's flipping through a book and he's marking off things and flipping through pages and marking off, and that was it. He never had any interaction with me. And the anesthesiologist finally just said, all right, count from 10. Before you know it, it'll all be over.
It was very, very painful. I've never felt pain like that in my life. I don't even really remember them talking to me at all during the procedure. I remember the nurse giving me sedation and she just kept rubbing my arm, shushing me, telling me to be quiet.
And I remember looking around and seeing about 3 or 4 other girls waking up also. And I got dressed, feeling very groggy, and I went into the other room.
And I just remember waking up and looking down the row, and all these girls were just leaned over asleep. And once they saw me sort of stirring, waking up, they came over. They had a little bag with my clothes in it, and they just stood me up right there in front of everybody, got me dressed right in the middle of the room, and then gave me a glass of water and some crackers and sent me out the door. And I went and sat on the curb and waited for my boyfriend to come.
When I stood up, their sugar and cookies didn't work, and I fainted. And I think I fainted because of the horror of what I had done. I realized that I was missing a large part of me, and it was too much for me to take.
I woke up crying, and I was actually ended up being pretty volatile and got a little physical with the nurse that tried to come in time with a puke bucket because I was getting sick, and I slapped her across the face. And I remember because I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want anyone to know. So anyway, I was pretty physical. So they took me and they put me in my own little private room. And one of the nurses sat in the corner and just let me cry it out. And so I sat on a table and I just literally rocked back and forth. And I think probably a couple hours passed and I just finally got too tired. And they let me go. And interestingly enough, they don't let you walk back out the front. There's a private exit. And later on in life, I wondered, had I seen someone like me in the state I was in at that moment after that abortion back out the front clinic, maybe I wouldn't have done it.
It's been nearly 100 years since the first health clinic of what later would become Planned Parenthood opened its doors to women in Brooklyn. And for nearly a century now, one core principle has guided everything all of you do: that women should be allowed to make their own decisions about their own health. It's a simple principle.
Even though we claim to be a pro-women's healthcare movement, we really did treat women like second-class citizens.
We were destroying women. We were destroying women. Now, maybe I only focused on the one that we were destroying by major surgery, but we were destroying women's lives.
One of the things that Planned Parenthood understands is that most Americans, even if they believe that abortion should be legal, they believe that it should be rare, and therefore Planned Parenthood has to position itself as a healthcare provider. They don't want to be known as Abortion Inc. And so they know that there is political expediency as well as public relations expediency to portray themselves as this very wide-ranging women's health organization.
Because we believe that women's health care does not come with a political label. That simply having legal rights doesn't mean anything. You actually can't access health care and control your own bodies.
Planned Parenthood does not provide any sort of emotional support for women after they've had an abortion because they really believe that women are not going to have any regrets after having an abortion. I mean, in fact, for the 8 years that I worked at Planned Parenthood, I really firmly believed that women did not regret their abortion procedures. Why? Because if a woman does regret her abortion, she's probably not going to come back to the abortion clinic where she initially felt that sort of hurt, right? So she's going to go somewhere else. She's going to go to a church. She's going to go to a pregnancy center. She's going to go to a professional therapist. She's not going to come back to the place where she felt victimized.
The anesthetic is usually placed using a syringe like so, long needle so that it can get up inside the speculum. You get the cervix opened up as far as necessary. A suction curette is used to go inside the uterus. It's hooked up to the suction machine like a vacuum cleaner.
The abortion procedure was a blind procedure. So an ultrasound was used, but we only used the ultrasound to determine how far along the woman was in her pregnancy. Then the ultrasound was rolled away. And the doctor would come in and he had a suction tube and he would just blindly poke around inside the woman's uterus until he thought he had enough blood and tissue in a glass jar. So when this doctor came in and told me, you know, surprisingly, it is safer if a doctor can see what he's doing while he's performing surgery, I just thought, well, gosh, if that's safer for a woman, then why aren't we doing that at Planned Parenthood? I mean, aren't we about keeping women safe? That's what we say. So I went and asked my supervisor about it. She said using an ultrasound during an abortion takes about an extra 3 to 5 minutes of time. And our goal inside of Planned Parenthood was to have a woman on the table, off the table, abortion completed in 5 minutes. So adding an extra 3 to 5 minutes of time was just not going to be something that we could do. So, okay, I accepted that answer. But the doctor told me that if time presented itself, that he would show me what an ultrasound-guided abortion looked like. My job was to hold the ultrasound probe on the woman's abdomen so that the doctor would be able to, in his words, visualize his target. The doctor began the procedure and he inserted the suction tube. The suction wasn't yet turned on. And when he touched the side of this baby, the baby jumped. And he began moving and flailing his arms and legs as if he was trying to move away. The machine was turned on and I stood there in disbelief. I mean, you know, I watched this child become dismembered in his mother's womb, and I remember the very last thing that I saw, this perfectly formed little backbone, you know, probably about this big, just swirling around in his mother's womb. And then I finally saw it be suctioned away. And then the screen was black. And I knew the abortion had been completed. I had witnessed a death.
As for Planned Parenthood's funding, it receives $528 million annually in government money, which supports services like cancer screenings, treatment of STDs, and birth control. The group also performs abortions, but by law, none of the federal money it receives can go to abortion.
The idea that we give taxpayer funds to Planned Parenthood is absurd. They argue, well, those funds aren't used for abortion. But what it does is free up $500 million a year to be used for their other issues. And what's that? Usually fighting us in court. So we're funding them to fight us in court while we're going after their abortion practice. So the fact of the matter is, it may not pay for abortions per se, but it gives them a way to move the money around. It's a shell game.
After the videos were made public, I heard from friends and constituents of mine who for years had given money to different organizations thinking that they were supporting health care for indigent individuals, and found out that what had happened was, in the instance of Planned Parenthood, they basically had become an abortion service.
The challenge is with a Planned Parenthood that so much of their business is health care. A lot of these dollars will go to support other aspects of Planned Parenthood when they still stand alone as the single largest provider of abortion in the country.
I've said on the floor of the House of Representatives that the sands of time should blow over the Capitol dome before we give one more penny of taxpayer dollars to this evil organization called Planned Parenthood. So I hope there's no equivocation in those words. The thought that we're going to force taxpayers to pay for all this evil is just beyond me. You know, I heard it said this just recently, that if ISIS were killing little babies and cutting them up and even giving their parts away, not selling them like Planned Parenthood is, the whole world would stand up and be outraged. And yet, we're forcing the taxpayers to pay Planned Parenthood to do specifically that.
That's going to do it for our broadcast this week, a very special broadcast. Our movie, Abortion Inc., by the way, the full movie is available online. So that's a great way for you to see the entire over 1 hour documentary. Again, abortionmovie.com. And if you want to sign that petition to defund Planned Parenthood as we now fight for it, the next stage here, aclj.org, that's aclj.org, or 1-877-989-2255. aclj.org, or 1-877-989-2255. Talk to you next week.
The fight to protect life is intensifying. Now, with the Trump administration at the helm, efforts are ramping up to defend life and defund Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion provider.
In reality, what abortion is the taking of an unborn child's life.
Planned Parenthood receives hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars each year. And at the ACLJ, we're working with the Trump administration and members of Congress to stop the flow of taxpayer dollars to Planned Parenthood.
America will look back on this season in history and will be mortified about what happened in the abortion industry.
I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want anyone to know.
We're aggressively fighting on Capitol Hill to stop funding big abortion. The time to do that is right now. Add your name to our petition to defend life and defund Planned Parenthood. Call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or you can add your name online, aclj.org.